However, when the next record came out, this bad boy here, this here bad boy instantly, instantly became my favorite. The first opening notes with the acoustic guitar and the kind of melodic singing from Bruce kind of made me raise an eyebrows. Did they do something even in the same direction as Summer in Time? But no, they caught themselves really really fast. This album also uses a lot of technology, synthesizers and synthesized sound, but it utilizes it differently than Summer in Time. They just make a story, let's just say. I don't know if it's one consistent story throughout the album, but it sounds musically like a very concise record. So they could have recorded this without a vocalist, which would have been fantastic, wonderful, like a jazz record, and just go from one composition into another. But anyway, I love this record from end to end. Some of the favorites are The Clairvoyant, The Prophecy, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. What an amazing song. The Evil That Men Do, Infinite Dreams, the opener Moonshine, All the Good Die Young, the album closer, phenomenal. Great, great record. And the big famous single from it is Can I Play With Madness, which ironically is my least favorite. It's a great song. So if the worst song on one of your records is Can I Play With Madness, you know that you have a banger and a winner. I cannot say enough good things of Iron Maiden. If you have to have only one Iron Maiden record and you don't want to go to the Paul Di'Anno years, make it this one. Very unique, very special. They haven't done anything similar before, and they haven't done anything like this since. I love how the record sounds. It might sound a little bit too electronic or over synthesized to some, but not to me. Again, don't get me started, because I can sit here and tomorrow morning still be talking about it. Next record is kind of weird. The fans hated it, at least when it came out, and even today I think that it's a record that's being talked down upon, and I think it's kind of unfair. When I got No Prayer for the Dying, released in 1990, which for me was a huge year. 1990 was the first time ever that I bought a brand new record. It was Gary Moore's Still Got the Blues. I became an instant fan. I knew that he was getting back into the blues. I loved it. And another great record that was released in that year was AC/DC's The Razor's Edge, also was a big hit. They had Megadeth, Rust in Peace. They had Black Sabbath, Tire. It was a record with Tony Martin. A lot of fans didn't like it. I loved it. Great, great Black Sabbath record. Deep Purple, Slave and Masters. When I talk about Deep Purple, I talk about that record, but I can guarantee you that I don't hate it like most fans. So 1990 was a big year for me. And this Maiden record was somewhat of a disappointment, but not for long. So I put it on, and the sound was lacking. The sound was kind of simple and a little bit thin, not a big thumping thick sound. But I gave it a spin or two or three, and slowly the songs started to grow on me. I love the record. I love The Assassin. I love Face Warning. I love Public Enemy #1. Can you imagine if Public Enemy #1 would have been released in 2020 or 2021? They would have scrubbed it off of YouTube. The title song, No Prayer for the Dying. The opening Tail Gunner is not bad either, but it requires a little getting used to it. And my big favorite from the album is Mother Russia. What a beautiful song, and what a beautiful thought. Maiden, if they're not the first, but they're among the first to dedicate a song to Russia's newly found freedom. It says that they can take back their heritage and their traditions and their culture. And unfortunately, in real life, it didn't play out like that. They tried to be monkeying a Western democracy, and that was stifled pretty fast. But again, this is not about politics. So all in all, No Prayer for Dying, in my opinion, is far better than the bad rap that it normally gets. A good record, and it ranks relatively high, or maybe in the top half of records. I should maybe sit down and make a list, but I don't play favorites so much. And the next up, they released Fear of the Dark, which is an absolute banger. It's back to fast, hard, furious, maybe a little bit even less Maiden-y than the previous albums. Just so like very, I would say almost mainstream kind or mainstream flavor heavy metal. And I think that that's what contributed to No Prayer of No Prayer for the Dying, I'm sorry, being less favored or being crapped upon by Maiden fans. It's sandwiched between two great records that are very easily and very instantly recognizable and lovable and likable and almost unquestionably great. Obviously, there's gonna be someone criticizing both of them. Actually, Fear of the Dark gets a fair amount of criticism from the fans, but I think that the main idea is that it's a good record. I loved it. I love the sound of it. I love the songs. But No Prayer of the Dying is sandwiched kind of between two obviously great records, which in my mind is pretty similar to Point of Entry, right? It's sandwiched between Screaming for Vengeance and British Steel, and then it has kind of this thin, non-manipulated sound, not a heavy, big, thumping sound, almost like acoustic, almost like they just played it raw directly in the amp without any modification. So both of them have that aspect to them. But I love No Prayer for the Dying, as well as Fear of the Dark, and a lot of great songs in Fear of the Dark. If you really want to crap on the album, if you really want to criticize it, I think it's a little bit too long. They kind of stuffed in it a few songs that don't really belong there, or that we could have done without. But my big favorites are Judas Be My Guide, Chains of Misery, Big Week or Be Dead, which was the lead single off of the record, the title track, Fear of the Dark, of course, Chains of Misery. It's just good songs. There are a couple bummers on it. There's The Weekend Warrior, which I didn't like at all. The Apparition is not so good. There is another good song, The Fugitive, that I remember. All good, but all in all, very positive. I love the record. I love the way it sounds. When I put it on, I thought that I was going to miss Adrian Smith a lot. And I do, but ironically, it doesn't detract a lot from the record. Sometimes you have the feeling that, hey, I wish Adrian was here. It sounds like Dave Murray did most of the work. Maybe the new guy, I don't even know how to say his name, Yannick Gers or Gers, whatever, Jerk. I have nothing against him, but I don't really hear or understand or appreciate his guitar playing. But anyway, they brought him via a solo record that Bruce Dickinson did in 1990. And at this point, Bruce also makes it public. I don't remember if it happened immediately when Fear of the Dark was released or during the tour, but he announced that he would be leaving Iron Maiden to pursue his solo career. The first album is typically not being respected a lot, Tattooed Millionaire. But to me, it had some good songs on it, solid songs, very not Maiden, very late 80s heavy metal. I don't know if it would be fair to characterize it as Guns N' Roses and Skid Row, but in that neighborhood, in that zip code. Good songs, Born in 58, I liked it a lot. Son of a Gun is a great song. I forgot the album titles, but good. Nothing super special, but it's a good start as a solo artist. And his subsequent solo records were much better than that. But let's give the Maiden boys a little bit of a rest, because I think that they're thirsty and they want to drink a beer. So let's go back to Jethro Tull, whom I hope have not fallen asleep in the meantime. After the horrors of the last album that we spoke about, Jethro Tull takes, for the first time, 3 years without releasing an official record. And in 1987, they come out with this, Crest of a Knave. This is again a different Jethro Tull record. I think that it steps back a little bit to Broadsword and the Beast. So you could consider it to be the follow-up to Broadsword and the Beast and ignore Ian's solo album and Under Wraps. And so this kind of continues in a similar direction that Broadsword and the Beast, but it does retain some of the synthesizer-ish or modern-ish sound. Some people accuse this record of being trying to emulate Dire Straits. I don't really hear it that much, but there might be some truth in that. Dire Straits in '85 was riding very high, and maybe Anderson was influenced by that a little bit. The big song of the record, of course, is Budapest, a phenomenal composition. It's just great, start to end. What a great performance, and how great it is to see them perform it live is just unbelievable. There are very few musicians, certainly not in the regular rock world, who could pull off a performance like Budapest. I mean, it's just amazing. And the rest of the songs are not quite on that level, but I love them all. From on a Freeway, a big favorite. Mountain Man, Raising Steam, I like. The opening, Steel Monkey, is kind of a hard rocker, I would say almost a heavy metal kind of song, heavily keyboarded. Farm on a Freeway, I told you. Said She Was a Dancer, not bad at all. Jumpstart is okay. Great song, solid record. Definitely belongs in most Jethro Tull libraries, especially if you're a hardcore guy. Well, if you're a real hardcore guy, then you want to have everything. But if you want to have, let's just say, a good snapshot or the bulk of the Tull records, then you may skip this one. Not essential, not must-have Tull, but very good record. But Budapest, you gotta listen to it, and you gotta check out the live versions of Budapest. Next up is Rock Island. When I heard this record first, I jumped out of my skin. But at that time, I wasn't all so familiar with Jethro Tull, so I didn't have like a preconceived expectation. I didn't expect to hear Aqualung number 4 or Thick as a Brick number 5, what have you. So I just put it on and I listened to it. Okay, here's a record. Here's the band Jethro Tull. I know they have good records. I love the album cover. It looks very good. I love it. Kind of minimalist and very evocative and expressive of what's inside, if such thing can be said. My big favorite from the record is The Wailer's Dues. Good, very beautiful, well made, well executed song. Heavy Water, I love it. Strange Avenues, the last song on the record, very good. But they're all good. Ears of Tin, big favorite of mine. Address to Kill is a good number. Rattlesnake Trail and Kissing Willie. Kind of, there's a go check out the single, the music video to Kissing Willie, in case you have any doubts as to what is being meant by that. Great record, solid record, and in my opinion should be in every, maybe not every Jethro Tull library, but in most of them. If you really appreciate this band, this one belongs in your library. They were accused on this one to copy ZZ Top. Maybe you could make the case that it's a little bit closer to the truth than the previous one, accusing them of copying Dire Straits, but actually they mentioned Dusty Hill, kind of in a literal Dusty Hill, climbing up a dusty hill. But maybe there was something more to that. So there is some similarities to ZZ Top. Next up, they release another one that I don't have a physical copy of, Catfish Rising. It was also a very good record. It sheds a little bit of the electronization, of the synthesization. So it kind of starts coming back to a more traditional, more folk-ish kind of a feel or a sound. I guess Ian Anderson got the memo that the press and a lot of fans didn't like his heavy use of synthesizers and chasing fans. But again, that was 91 already the fashions were changing. So all in all, a great solid album. Where do I rank it? A little bit difficult, because it's not like it blows Rock Island and Crest of a Knave out of the water. You could make the case that it's better than both of them. I hold Rock Island in very high esteem, so it's a little bit difficult to top it. But Catfish Rising is a very good, solid album. To me, it's a little bit behind Rock Island, but the thought and the idea is very good, and they would continue going in a similar direction. So Doctor to My Disease is one of my big favorites. Sparrow on the Schoolyard Wall, Tall Thin Girl, Rocks on the Road, Occasional Demons, This Is Not Love, the opening song on the record, Roll Your Own, I think that's the last song on the record. So all good, well executed, well made songs, sound good. Martin Barre is very good. The whole band is very good, and of course, as usual, as normal with Jethro Tull, there's always changes in lineup. Next up, they release another live record, which to my great delight is way better than Bursting Out, A Little Light Music, which is a very, very good mix of all of their periods and all of their times. So they have songs from, I think they didn't leave out any record, even Under Wraps. They do play a song for the first one, but it might not be My Sunday Feeling. Maybe Song for Jeffrey. I forget already. I should have looked it up. But they play, I think, at least one song from each record. Of course, concentrating on the newer records, Catfish Rising, and some songs from there. But a very good, very well made, very well produced record. So if you want a live Jethro Tull, I know that for some people this sounds like heresy, but if you want a good live Jethro Tull record, then I would recommend Little Light Music over Bursting Out. But let's give Mr. Anderson a little bit of a rest, given that we are already in the year 1992 for both Tull and Maiden. And let's see what's happening with Maiden. Like said, Bruce Dickinson left to do a solo career, and he releases a couple of solo albums which the fans are ranting and raving about. Pretty solid, pretty straightforward heavy metal. One record is called Balls to Picasso, I think 95, 94 maybe, and then Accident of Birth, and then Chemical Wedding was the third one. All three of those records are in some ways similar to Halford's solo records, Resurrection and Crucible. And both of them are straightforward heavy metal with a little bit of a spicing and flavoring of the sign of the times. I wouldn't call it outright grunge, but there is a little bit of a grunge kind aroma, or maybe more industrial or nu metal, whatever you want to call that. And at least in the case of Dickinson, I'm happy that it happened outside of the framework of Iron Maiden, because one of the bands that we all have to be grateful to and thankful to for not following the fads and not, let's just say, selling out is Iron Maiden. They didn't record that many albums in the 90s, that's true. But No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark, as well as the other two records to come in the 90s, definitely did not go to chase the fans. And another band who also didn't give in to the temptation of following the trends was Motorhead. They banged out a good number of records in the 90s, and there is not a shred of a feel, of a smell, of an aroma of what was going on at that time, putting to sleep the notion that the 90s weren't good for metal. That's BS. Metal wasn't good for 90s, but again, we will talk about it another time. Let's get back to Maiden records. Enough to say that Dickinson's records are fairly good, a good listen. Men of Sorrows, they have the Tears of the Dragon, so they have a good number of good songs on it, well produced, and a very good balance between being traditional heavy metal, let's just say, or being squarely heavy metal, not being nu metal or grunge or industrial or some crap like that, but having a little bit of the flavor of the times. The production is kind of has that sound, so it's okay as long as it's not labeled Maiden. Maiden, in the meantime, are struggling finding a vocalist. They bring Blaze Bayley, who kind of looks like Bruce. In my opinion, there were better choices. I right now don't remember specific names, but I think there's a guy who ended up in Halloween, and or maybe the guy from Accept. I'm not sure. No, he wouldn't have been good for Maiden, but there was one other guy I was thinking about who could have been better than Blaze Bayley. Blaze Bayley had difficulty following the high-pitched singing kind of voice of Bruce Dickinson. He was more like of a growler or a guttural kind of singer. He came from Wolfsbane, which I never really listened to too much. And they released The X Factor, kind of a dark, doomy and gloomy record. I've seen that Steve Harris was going through some personal problems and that affected him. They did something that they previously didn't do much, kind of a stop and go, leaving a little air between the notes, and not just grinding with the riff, which I think is not a bad idea. It's in general, it's a good idea for metal, but not when it's overdone, and not to make too many changes. So they should have brought in this guy Blaze Bayley and make a very straightforward Maiden record. So they made a couple more changes. They got a different illustrator. They made the logo look a little bit different, and the feel and the flavor, if you will, of the album. I'm very much in favor of letting the fans know that, hey, all that changed is one member of the band. The vocalist changed, we didn't change. We're still here for you. And in a way they did that, but still they hinted at kind of going a little bit with the sign of the times, maybe, or at least making a change. But again, not bad. Overall, the record, in my opinion, gets more crap than it deserves. It's better than most people would make it. Again, we live in a world where singers, vocalists carry a heavier weight than, in my opinion, they should carry. But anyway, I think the X Factor is a solid record, and given all the turmoil and everything that's going on, it's a very good record. There's Edge of Darkness, which I like, Fortunes of War, that they used to open their shows with that, Sign of the Cross. It is a good song. 2 a.m. It's okay. I'm kind of on the fence with it. Sometimes I like it, sometimes not. Lord of the Flies is a good number. So overall, it's a very listenable record. It's not super maideny, and I think this is the big criticism against the record. They should have made an album sleeve and the logo like the fans are used to, and a more normal Maiden-ish. So not to bring too many changes at once. Virtual 11 followed 2 or 3 years later, pretty much in the same vein. They changed the logo even a little bit more, but thank God not as much as some other bands. And they have a great song on it, The Clansman. The Educated Fool is a very good song. Future Real is super listenable. The Angel and the Gambler. So very good Maiden-ish Maiden records, but with a kind of a departure from their regular songs. And then they had some other problems with Bailey. He was in an accident. I don't recall right now exactly when that was, when it was between the two records or after. Anyway, on the live shows, they down-tuned a lot in order to be with his voice, and a lot of fans didn't like that. So they say goodbye, and as many people suspected, Bruce Dickinson comes back, bringing with him Adrian Smith, who was also pretty sorely missed from the band. The other dude, Yannick Gers, did a fine job, I think, but I think it wasn't the same dynamic. It wasn't the same, Downing Tipton, Gorham Robertson kind of Siamese twins that everybody was used to. And in 2000 they released Brave New World, which was received with open arms. There was ecstasy. I remember there was a concert in Madison Square Gardens, and by the time I wanted to get tickets, it was all sold out. There were a couple nights and you couldn't get tickets. There was the era of the big scalpers. There was the Rush concert that was very controversial, that some scalpers bought up all the tickets and sold them at hiked up prices. But anyway, fans were ecstatic. Of course, the press were ecstatic. I mean, who wouldn't be? And one of the beautiful things is that it was all done gracefully. There wasn't a lot of crap released in the press. There was some, of course, they spoke about it, and there were some jabs and barbs here and there, but all in all, it was a lot cleaner than other bands in similar situations. So very, very beautiful. I think that this is one of the most beautiful human kind of acts in rock and roll. I'm sorry, I meant to say that they let Yannick Gers stay in the band. So in other words, just because Bruce and Smith came back, we're not going to throw you out. So that's really beautiful, because every other band would have told you, hey, here you go, take your last paycheck and goodbye. They left him in the band. To be honest with you, I don't hear him. Not on records, not in the shows. I watched a couple of shows. I have no freaking clue what he does there musically, but he's on the stage, he's running around, he's throwing his guitar in the air. So it's a nice prop. I don't know how much they pay him. For all you know, Maiden, they just pay him equally like everybody else. I mean, it's just a very beautiful human gesture to leave him there. Even though they don't need another, who needs 3 guitar players? I mean, let's be honest with you. But anyway, I think the only thing that can top this is Def Leppard waiting for the drummer to regrow his hand. Not literally, not physically regrow his hand, but learn to play with just one hand, right? Yeah, I'm so old that I remember when Def Leppard's drummer had 2 hands. What do you know? So this is the story of Brave New World. Ironically for me, Brave New World doesn't do it. And of all Maiden records, it's probably my least favorite. Even less than Virtual 11 and X Factor, ironically. There's one other one that I like less than those 2. I really don't connect with that record. I don't like the sound. I don't know. It just doesn't it's not a very enough Maidenish Maiden record for me to truly love. But I did have it in my library, and there are some good songs on it. Ghost of the Navigator, Blood Brothers. You know, once in a blue moon, I would put it on, you know, just for the nostalgia of the good old days. But let's close the decade with Brave New World and check on Mr. Anderson. He's getting bored.